Welcome everyone to Progression from Depression. And today we're doing things a bit differently. And I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Slade, and I'm the founder of a business that I've created called 𝐏𝐫𝐨𝐬. And what we do there, I'm a coach. I'm a wellness coach for anybody who's struggling with their mind. So I've got something called the brain health blueprint, and that's the main focus that I've got, focusing on the mind. And I'm here today to have a podcast with these guys. So I'd like to send it over to Daffy to introduce himself, man. How are you today, bro?
Yeah, g'day Slade. Hi, I'm Darren, aka Daffy. I'm a support worker, have been a support worker for 8, nearly 9 years or something. In mental health, adult mental health, young people mental health, youth work, alcohol and drugs, family support, life coach, and able to train in that as well. And most of all, peer worker, lived experience. I've had my lived experience in mental health, mental unwellness, and stoked to be here with you guys. And today we've got a guest speaker where we've got Mark in. Mark is a member of our Primal Man crew. And yeah, Mark, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I just have a background in education. When I finished uni, I was a teacher for 3 years in primary school. And then I got into project management. So I had enough of the teaching. So I got into project management. I did that for many years. I retired from that about 9 years ago. So I'm 64. I took early retirement at 55. So just living a retired lifestyle. But I have personal experience with mental health challenges, and that's what's drawing me into this. I'm 64 years old, and I started getting depressed in my teen years, probably at about 14. So I've got about 50 years experiences of dealing with depression, and I feel like I've got a lot to share as far as how depression works from personal experience, and also how I've been able to overcome depression. So that's and to be able to support people, men or anyone else, as far as dealing with depression, that's something that's very important to me. So that's me.
Excellent, Slade. So what are we jamming on today?
So what we're jamming on today is something called rumination. So we're gonna pin it down to one topic, this podcast, and with the years of knowledge that you guys have, I'm really curious to ask some questions and understand it more for myself and also for the audience. So I'll kick it off with, what is rumination? Starting with you, Daffy.
Wow, it's a big one, and it is a really prominent one for me, because when I worked out what rumination was and how it was affecting me, it was the big spiral into depression. So rumination for me was um, negatively, because there's a positive and negative with everything. There's positive rumination and there's negative rumination, but I was predominantly in the negative rumination. When a negative experience happened, it would affect me, being sensitive, it would affect me, and I would stay on those thoughts for sometimes weeks, literally weeks. And it'd start off as immediately after the experience happened. I would stay on the thought, and then the spiral would begin, and it would be weeks. Yeah, there was breaks out of that. Of course, I was at work and I had to focus on my work. So I had a break from those negative thoughts because I had to focus on my work. But then as soon as a bit of spare time come along, and even sometimes during my work, those negative thoughts about the experience, I'll put it into context, say a breakup from a relationship. I would be thinking about that person. I would be thinking about everything, you know, from the start of the relationship, during the relationship, at the end of the relationship, what caused it, and what did it. And it would just it would consume me. It would fully consume me. So rumination is I'm very aware of it, and it is something that I'm aware of. And if I get stuck on which I don't these days, I don't get stuck on negative thoughts. A great what was the role she played in mental health? She was an occupational therapist in mental health and a personal friend. And one day I was talking about something, and then I must have repeated it a few hours later, or I was still in it a few hours later, and it was her that brought it to my attention. She said, "You're ruminating." And I'm like, "What's ruminating?" So I got to find out what ruminating really was, and I could see what it was, and I could pick it apart. And she gave me a really amazing tool in rumination. She said, "There's nothing wrong with rumination." She said, "If you're going to ruminate about the negative stuff, yeah, go ahead and do it. But time yourself. Only spend about 10 minutes doing it, and look at your watch. And when 10 minutes is up, get out of it. Because that is the spiral. That's the one that's taking you on that spiral. If you're going to spend any more than 10 minutes doing it, then the spiral's just going down and down and down and down." So that was an amazing tip that occupational therapist gave me. And I still use it today. It's like, right, okay, yeah, okay, I'm thinking about that, I'm aware of it, but hey, look at my watch, I'm out of it. I'm not going to go there anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing the journey behind it all, how it did look, what it is, and how to actually implement some sort of tips and tools behind it, man. So thank you. Mark, what is rumination for you?
Yeah, so for me, rumination is thinking about feelings rather than just feeling the feelings. So there have been times in the past I've been depressed, and I've stayed depressed for long periods of time. And the rumination was going over and over in my mind. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I depressed? Why am I feeling anxious, or whatever it is? And trying to go digging down into my past and thinking, oh, maybe it was this thing that happened. Maybe it was that thing that happened, bouncing around between different things. And similar to Daphne, I would spend days or weeks going over and over in my mind. Okay, what's causing this? Thinking about what might be causing why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And what I've discovered to help me move out of depression and to move out of rumination is to lower my focus from just being in my head, lower my focus down into my body, and let go of thinking about the feelings, and let go of trying to work out where the feeling's coming from, and just feel the feeling, and let the feeling, the feelings have a growth, that the feeling sort of grows, and then it subsides as the feeling works through your system. Just let it flow through me, just feel it without thinking about it, and then move on to the next feeling. And to me, that's been a major step in recovering from rumination and recovering from depression. So
Yeah, wow. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark. And how did those depressive times show up? Like, what if you stayed in rumination and didn't actually feel what was going on, continue thinking about it, what would that have caused? Or what did it cause?
Well, as similar to what Daphne was saying, this spiral that keeps dragging you down. It's just a vicious cycle. You just go more and more into more and more rumination and into more and more depression.
Mm. And how, for both of you guys, with if you didn't incorporate these tools and these learnings to recover from rumination, how do you feel like that would have controlled your life in a negative sense?
Well, for me, it was controlling my life. And it was a root system. So that the rumination would start with the experience of what happened, and I'd be ruminating on that. And then as the spiral went down, for me, it was leading into stories that weren't necessarily true. It was like almost making up these stories as it went along, because this root system just leads into, for me, it leads into so many different thoughts, which I'd have to say 99% were just completely untrue. So it was almost like this fantasy land of negativity. That's where it led for me. And what happens there is that when it hits there, the rumination in itself is a low energy feeling for me, feeling low and depressed. But once it hits that root system, that spiral really takes hold. So it's not a slow spiral down; it's a quick spiral down.
Yeah.
And it's so unhealthy because I get headaches out of it. I feel physically unwell out of it, and it releases so many chemicals into our system, cortisol being one of them. And it's like this unnecessary download of not only negative thoughts and patterns and things, but also on the physiological level, these chemicals which are no good for our bodies anyway. So it's it's that root system, and it would even lead into what other people think about me, because it all leads back to that experience that happened. So it's that experience, and then the root system, and then in that root system is these thoughts of, those people don't like me anymore, or that person doesn't like me, and this could be completely untrue. It's just it was all in my mind. So I'm making up these stories about who doesn't like me because this experience happened now, and I'm a bad person, and I'm no good, and I'm not worthy, and and it would all lead into what we talked about last week, was the suicidal ideation and the suicidal, the thoughts of suicide. And it was all made from one experience. The majority of it was a big story that I'm telling myself that is most likely, 99% untrue.
Yeah, wow, man. It sounds like rumination it's almost a choice. And that's what I've experienced for myself. It's deep down, it's truly a choice, and it's my responsibility to take control over my thoughts and my mind, and that spiral, that downward spiral. And it's interesting that you mentioned it. It affected so much more than the mind. The physical side of things came in, and then the mental side of things came in, and then the emotional side of things. So by focusing on rumination and choosing that negative way of working, it doesn't help much with anything. So we've got the negative side of it, and you touched on the positive side of it earlier in the call. And how does that show up for you guys? The positive side of rumination, because it's not something many of us talk about, positive overthinking or positive rumination. So how does it show up in a positive sense?
Well, for me, there's a man watching this podcast right now, and we've been through our journey together, both positive and negative. So positive rumination for me, when I meet with this man and we talk about the amazing times we've had together, whether it be overseas or whether it be in a different part of Australia that we've been in and explored. And that's positive rumination for me is when I can think about 𝐏𝐫𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐨𝐧 National Park in Western Australia and the most mind-blowing experience camping out there for a week. I can sit and really go into that and go into those feelings and go into that whole experience there, and it's completely different because all I feel is so much joy, and I can even feel it right now just mentioning that name, 𝐏𝐫𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐨𝐧 National Park, and feeling it and going back there and being there. So those feelings and everything is the positive side of rumination. And you touched on it. It's a choice. It really is a choice.
Definitely, man. It's crazy the polarity between the two, the positive and negative. It's either the choice to stay in the negative and spiral down, or stay in the positive, which can be a form of spiraling up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just remembering those times, those feelings, and that's just one choice, which is absolutely wild. And Mark, I'm curious, man. What's your version of positive rumination? How does that show up for you?
Well, for me, the word positive and the word rumination don't go together in the same sentence. To me, there is no such thing as positive rumination, because to me, rumination is all being stuck up here in my head brain and just going around in circles all the time. To me, there's never anything positive about it. And the way I've been able to overcome that is, as I've said before, getting in touch with my body and my emotions, but also getting in touch with the idea that we actually have three brains. We don't just have the brain in our head. So we have a brain in our gut and we have a brain in our heart as well. And when my whole mind, body, emotional system is working optimally the way I really want it to work, what actually goes on in my head is rising up from my gut and filtering up through my heart, and then it goes up here. And when I'm doing that, there's none of this going around in circles at all. It's all this amazing, insightful wisdom coming up from my gut, filtering through my heart to say, how does it feel? Does it feel right? And then it goes into my head, and then it's also based on intuition, which is a different. You get a gut feeling about something. That's all about intuition. It's a totally different way of thinking and being. And as I recover from depression, as I recover from rumination, I'm in this space of the total three brains and the intuition happening all the time, where every thought that I have is coming from this whole system, not just from going around in circles up here. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, wow, that's super insightful. So, from my understanding, what you shared, it's get out of the head completely and focus on how you feel physically, and then work backwards, back up into the head.
Yep.
Yep. That's it's such a simple take on it. It's such a simple take on it, and it all happens internally, which I really like about that. So, do you feel if we change the word from rumination to positive overthinking, or what happens when you're, say, studying or just really interested in getting your brain muscles going, how would that look where you're thinking so much in the mind, but positively, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so if I'm learning something, and I'm a self-motivated learner, so I'm learning things all the time. I go, you go into YouTube, and I go into YouTube videos about psychology and relationships or spirituality, things that interest me. And yeah, my mind's working a lot, thinking about all this a lot, because I'm taking all this in. It's quite amazing. But again, it's not just being up here, it's filtering through my gut. In my gut, does this feel right to me? What this person is saying. In my heart, does it feel right to me? And the whole system is working rather than just being up here.
Mm. Yeah, wow. So it works both ways in the negative sense and how to cope with it, how to manage it, as well as the learning and the positive sense.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's really awesome. Super insightful, bro. I found for myself when I've been in times of rumination, it's just kind of taking myself back to those experiences. It I stayed in places because I was consuming substance, which then suppressed more and more things. So I kind of put a wall around me so I couldn't actually escape. And how I how that showed up in life was that it just held me back from everything. And how how you mentioned before, Dappy, with the physical side of things and how it negatively affects it. 100%, man. It was affecting my physical state, just lethargic and unmotivated. Of course, the substance had something to do with that, but if the brain and my mind was in a negative place, it's not going to help anything in my body. So it's awesome it's interesting to kind of go back to that place with the wisdom that you guys are sharing to connect the dots and to understand it more. Mm.
So Slade, you're saying when you're ruminating, it you become very unmotivated out of it. That as a
Mm.
result.
Yeah. So it was more of a, oh, actually, no, it happens every now and again when when there's a challenge that I'm faced with, whether it's something to do with a client that I'm challenged by, or there's a physical challenge that I'm up against, or going out to do the thing that I know I need to do and not feeling like doing it. And then I kind of spiral into that. And that's how it shows up now. And I choose in that moment to distract myself somehow and not deal with it and not feel. And then I ruminate on distracting myself and feel more and more crappy because I'm distracting myself and not doing the thing. So that's how it shows up, like in the present. But previously, it used to show up as in I was hungover because I had a massive night, like a few years ago, absolutely smashed the night before, and I would physically feel not so good. And then I would start thinking about the physical side of things and then regret the things that I did the night before, or not remember the things I did the night before, and sit and spiral and spiral and spiral. And then the escapism kicked in again. So I needed to drink that night again. So it was the spiral just didn't stop because of the substance use, which then affect me cognitively and then physically and emotionally. Mm,
Yeah, well said, brother. Well put. Yep, I hear you on that. Well said.
thank you, bro. So, Mark, have you experienced you're speaking a lot about the internal things and how you can improve the negative states that you've been put in. How can you do it, or how have you done it in introducing external things, whether it's communicating with other people or using some sort of physical aspect externally to improve that state of negative rumination?
Oh, well, it's very important to stay connected socially. So times in the past I've been depressed. I've also been very withdrawn socially. Sort of go hand in hand. And it was sort of coming from a fear that being around people was going take me down to a lower state. And as I recover from that and move out of my depression, stay in my body and my emotions. See, emotions have got a lot to do with relationships. So if I'm in that low space where I can't access my emotions, or I'm constantly thinking about why I'm feeling the way I am, it makes it more challenging for me to relate with people because I'm not present with how I'm feeling in the moment. And a very important part of relating with people is to be present with just how I'm feeling in the moment, rather than ruminating about how I may have, why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling because of something that happened in the past. So yeah, pulling myself out of it internally very much relates to pulling myself out of it socially and staying with social connections with people.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. So having place to express it, would that be a way to put it? To express what's going on?
Yeah. So what I've learned to do is be in the present moment with how I'm feeling in the moment, and rather than trying to express to people, I'm really depressed because I'm so sad about something that happened in the past. That doesn't work so well. It's more just being in the present moment, how I'm feeling about the weather today, how I'm feeling about what this activity I'm doing with friends. Just being in the present moment rather than being stuck in the past and ruminating about the past.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome, bro. Thank you for sharing, man. So we've touched on a fair bit of the negative side of things, and I want to focus for the rest of the podcast just how we can overcome it, especially for people out there who may be in the stage of ruminating, or it's a present thing at the moment. Just focus on tools that we've all used to get through those and progress through them. So what are like, say, 3 tools that you've got, Daffy, that you use when progressing out of those stages of rumination? What are your main focuses?
Well, diet and exercise, and the intoxicants. Now these days, I'll have an alcoholic beverage, maybe 3 at the most, generally 1 to 2, and I'll leave it at that, because that is one of those tools that isn't healthy for me at all, because of the rumination and history of depression and suicide and all the rest. So that became aware to me. Again, I've got to keep touching on this amazing, beautiful man that's watching this podcast. He was a catalyst in helping me change those drinking habits. It jeopardized our friendship, and I chose the friendship over getting hammered to a point. So for me, it's reducing the intoxicants, 100%, and exercise. I'm an exercise nut, and it doesn't feel right if I'm not doing it. I can feel when my diet and my exercise isn't, when I haven't done it for a couple of weeks. It only takes 1 week. After 1 week, I feel it. I feel the slugginess, and I feel the low energy, and I've monitored my thoughts to the point where it's like, oh, I'm starting to think differently now. And that's because my exercise haven't 2 weeks into it, and I can really notice the thoughts, the negative feelings, the rumination, and that sort of stuff starting to kick in. So diet, exercise for me is a lifestyle now. It's not anything else but a lifestyle. I've changed my lifestyle, and that's not easy to do. It takes time and patience, and some, in my experience, relapses. But I've got it to a point now where it's on an even keel, and I'm aware of it. The third thing for me is positive, intelligent, loving family and friends. There's the three things for me: diet, exercise, and the people I choose to be around and associate with. So there's my three things for sure. There, and I could talk on them for hours, but I understand where we've got our time limits, so I'm just going to keep it as those three things.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. What I've found, I agree 100%, and I relate to all three of those, man. And for myself, I had to quit alcohol completely. I had a negative relationship with it, and that was affecting me cognitively and affecting everything else, as well as the physical thing. We've got, our body is meant to move, and we're meant to consume natural or more natural things in our body to make it work more effectively. And man, we're social beings as well. So we've got to be social. In a space like this, we're making the most of what we've got using technology, which is absolutely awesome. And we've got to keep social. And yeah, so I appreciate you sharing those, man. Definitely resonate with them. And Mark, what are your kind of three tools in a way that you use for progressing through it?
Well, I can agree with what's been said. So the exercise is so important. The diet is so important. Staying connected socially is so important. I probably would add just a couple of things. So as I was saying before, lowering my focus out of my head, brain, down into my body and my emotions, and being present with it, how I'm feeling at the moment. I can also relate to what Daphne was saying about making up stories in my mind. And an example of that, about 10 or 15 years ago, I was seeing a counselor, and I made up this story. I was convincing this counselor that this event happened in my early childhood. And I had so convinced myself, and I convinced the counselor that it happened. And and then I was speaking with my mom about it, and I told her, "Oh, you remember when this happened in my early childhood?" She said, that didn't happen." She verified that it was a completely untrue story. So it's a getting out of that story writing of making up stories that are just not true. And that's just one example. There've been so many times in my life where I've been depressed, and I make up stories in my mind about, as Daphne was saying, about this person doesn't like me, that person doesn't like me. Completely untrue. And
Yeah, wow.
and other things as well. It's moving out of the story writing in the mind. Yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, awesome. So how do you feel like you progressed out of those stories, or to reiterate to yourself to believe that they were untrue?
That's another component as well. I've been into dreams for over 40 years. I've been writing down my dreams, and I've got to the point where the meaning of the dream is quite clear to me when I have it. And dreams are very symbolic, and they speak in metaphors and symbols and so forth. But in recent months, I've been going through a lot of healing, and I've been having a lot of dreams that is very clear to me, telling me what my childhood trauma really was. And I've been meditating on that and releasing that trauma and so forth. And so it's letting it arise organically out of my psyche, out of my subconscious, in a real, genuine, authentic way, rather than all those stories in my mind, thinking about, oh, must have been what happened to my childhood that makes me feel this way. So yeah, that's been another thing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So by gaining understanding of it, to gain understanding of it, you listen to your subconscious through your dreams, and then you're organically healing without trying to force the rumination out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, wow, that's huge, man. And what I feel like in my experience, I've tried to take control of my mind and try and figure it out and just get out what's going on, which that it's almost like an added stress that doesn't help at all. So to understand there's other ways of doing it that for you seem to work super effectively is really awesome to gain understanding on, man.
Well, it was taking me 50 years to do that. Yeah, I'm just at a life stage where it's just all flows. But it's taken a lot of work over many years to get to this point.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think that's like I feel deeply honored to have Mark here, and as an older man from us, you know, with this experience, even though it's taken you 50 years, Mark, man, blessings, because there's not only I'm not going to speak for Slade, but I think that both of us are getting an enormous amount out of what you're saying. I know that I am. I'm just like, right, I've got my notepad here and I'm taking down these notes from what you're saying. But it's the listeners as well, Mark, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, is to tell our stories, and hopefully there's some listeners out there that can pick up on some stuff, and which I'm sure there is, and go from there. But 50 years experience in this, that's a blessing. Thanks for being here, Mark.
Yeah, well, see, I chose the path in my profession that did not have to do with mental health. So I was a teacher, then I was a project manager. So nothing to do with mental health. It's the explorations in mental health has been what I've done on my own as a sideline to my career, just for my own benefit. And it's just what I've learned, you know, from the persistence of knowing deep down that I would be able to find the organic source of my depression, and persisting with it over many years. That's what's got me to where I am.
Yeah, wow, man. Honored to have you here, bro. And
Right.
I feel if it can add value to Daffy and I's life, it's gonna really add value to many people. And one of the people watching live now has expressed that, yeah, he appreciates your wisdom, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no
So
worries.
it's great to witness the impact that you have as well as feel it for myself. So thank you, bro.
No worries.
Thank you. So I'm curious because you've done a lot of healing over the years, and for some of the viewers, they may not want to wait 50 years of healing and then feel better about themselves. So not everybody wants to do that. So how do you feel by implementing these things that we're talking about? Can somebody start feeling good or improve and progress in less than 50 years?
Yeah, as a non-mental health professional, I can only speak from my own experience. And but after 50 years, I realized, okay, the depression comes from childhood trauma, which relates to feelings that are really difficult to deal with. And that's what leads into depression. What each individual does to uncover their childhood trauma and heal it, well, there's professionals out there who can support you with it. There's counselors, there's therapists, and so forth. My personal experience with counselors is a bit of hit and miss, where sometimes they helped me, sometimes they didn't. And in the times when they didn't, it was all about being stuck up here, where I'm talking to the counselor about what's going on in my mind and all these different things and stories I'm making up. And then the counselor picks up on the story. Oh, yeah, maybe. And the counselor starts telling a story too. and I thought there've been some counselors I've seen where it was just a complete waste of time and money and took me on the wrong track, because we're both up here trying to figure it out with our heads. What's really helped for me is I was part of a dream group for 15 years, and the experience of regularly meeting with people, sharing our dreams and supporting each other, what it might mean and so forth, has got me to the point where I just do it on my own. I know what the dream means. But yeah, for someone who doesn't want to spend all that time, it really depends on the individual, because it depends on how deep your childhood trauma is and what your childhood trauma actually is, and how do you access it. And there'll be counselors out there who'll be able to support you with that. And it depends on how deep you want to go, and things that are way outside of my understanding, because I'm not trained as a mental health professional. So yeah, I think it'd be really individual depending on the person and how deep you're willing to go and how deep your childhood trauma is.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your insight with that, bro. And yeah, I find I've had some experiences that haven't served me with counselors and as well, and connecting the dots to the mind and this part of the body and why it wasn't actually working so well for me. It makes sense now that you've brought that up. So what I found for myself with people that I've worked with, and how I've actually in a way healed from challenges that I've faced, is to incorporate multiple areas of life and work on them at the same time. And what I mean by that, if we are focusing solely on, I want to improve my mental state, and that's the only goal, nothing else is getting improved at that time. So what I've got something called the brain health blueprint, and what that is taking a holistic take on how to improve the state of mind, but then all of life's certain areas. And it really resonates for me what both of you guys have shared. We're looking at the diet and then the physical side of things and the emotional side of things, the mental side of things. There needs to be harmony with them in some way. There needs to be some sort of balance with all of the areas to improve how the mind works, to improve how everything in life works. And it really reiterates how necessary what I teach is from my perspective.
Well, the other thing, sorry, one of the other thing is all about medication, and the standard treatment for depression and other mental health problems is medication. And I have in the past taken medication, and it's really helped me. But there's a lot more, my perspective is there's a lot more to the story than just taking the medication. You've got to work on yourself. And I've worked on myself enough to the point now where I don't need to be on medication, because I know I can manage my emotional state and my healing, without needing the medication. But there have been times in the past where I really needed it, and it helps. So it's just a combination of using the medication, but also knowing there's more to the story than just taking it.
Yeah, 100%. They really serve their place, and it's awesome that you brought that up. Daffy, have you had experience with that side of things?
No, I have been diagnosed in the past with depression, anxiety, and I was subscribed medication, but I didn't get those scripts filled. I chose not to, and even when I was first prescribed it at 2029 medication. Even then, before I had, you know, I was mature enough to study. We didn't have Google and all that sort of stuff sort of back then. And something internally was like, no, I'm not going to get that filled. I'm not going to do that, because I just, something inside was just telling me not to. And who knows, it might have helped. I wouldn't have needed to go through another 10 years or 15 years of negative experiences and depression and all the rest of it. So what I chose to do, I traveled. When you know, something happened, it was like an escape and a run from that situation. I wasn't equipped to stay there and deal with it. So it's a double-edged sword, really, because on one side of that sword was I was running from, instead of dealing with issues and experiences, instead of going into it and unpacking it and dealing with it in a healthy way, I ran. On the other side of the sword was I was traveling the world. So I got to see the world, and I put myself in a whole new environment, whether it be overseas or whether it be to another state and getting another job, either in the same industry or a different industry, just getting out of there. And that for me was medication. That for me was breathing space. I'd separated myself from the experience and the trauma, and I got to relax. And so the good side was meeting new people, exploring a new land, exploring all of these different things. And on the other side of it, those traumas were eventually going to catch up to me. I was going to have to deal with what I was doing from a young age, from about 21 years old. I was packing traumas in a suitcase, in a bag, and I was carrying them with me, because I traveled from the age of 21 only until about 3 years ago. So there was about 25 years of travel. And it wasn't 25 years of baggage or 40 years of baggage that I was carrying. It was only on all of those travels, I actually worked out for myself that I was running from stuff. When I realized that, I didn't run from stuff. I would stay and try and sort things out. And then the traveling continued. So I was able to travel without adding to that baggage. And those travels became worldwide and a lot more eyes wide open to the world. So that's my story on medication. I was prescribed it. I chose not to take it, but I do understand they definitely have their place. I work in the mental health and disability sector, and I can see where it is really, medication has really helped a lot of people. And at the same time, it's a part of my job to talk to advocate for the people I'm supporting. So I get to have meetings with coordinators, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. I get to go into those meetings and have with them. And all I do in those meetings is put an opinion across as an observer, as a support worker. I've helped people, I've supported people in my work to get off medication. And I've also supported people to look into possibly seeing those clinicians, meeting with those clinicians, and asking about medication.
Mm.
So there's my personal journey and on about medication and my professional outlook on it.
Mm. Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you for
I
sharing
can
that.
add, while we're on the topic, I can add to that because medication is very helpful, but also medication has side effects. So I was on this medication for a while, and it was making me uncoordinated. So I'd be playing tennis. I was misjudging the ball, and I was misjudging the swing of my arm. It was really frustrating, and I couldn't hit the ball the way I normally do. It was very frustrating. And through a different process of just getting in touch with my feelings and healing myself and so forth that I've talked about, and then going off that medication, my tennis went back to normal. I was coordinated again. So that's another factor that needs to be looked at with medication.
Yeah, definitely. There's a place for both pharmaceutical side of things and then other ways and kind of holistic ways of doing things. And we can't, they've each got their place, man. And there's a bit of a controversy behind it all, but as long as they can be complementary to each other, I feel like that's the best way to do it, and being open-minded. Because I can tell you, if my leg broke, I would love some sort of pharmaceutical to help that pain. I'm not gonna just feel into it or breathe through it. That's not me. So having that balance helps, and it's awesome to discuss this and how it can improve some sort of overthinking and that rumination, because yeah, it's not something that we talk about often with medications, kind of shone upon.
Yeah, with it's just something's come up with me as well. And what I tell myself, so it's my own personal outlook on my life and my traumas and depressions and all the rest of it, is whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's something I'll unpack with a good brother or two. My outlook is I've never healed from my traumas. This is what I think. I've never healed from my traumas. None of them are healed. It's just that I've worked out how to deal with my traumas. They haven't healed because if I want to, I can access them at any time, and I can act, react, and project those traumas at any time if I want to. Again, it comes down to a choice, and my choice is to be a good man, to be a strong man, to be a healthy man, so that I can be a better support worker and better in my job. Because, I mean, it doesn't look too good if a person going into the support work area is projecting their traumas onto who they're trying to support. So that's when I got into support work 8-9 years ago. That was my mindset, was, okay, I've got these traumas and I've got these triggers. And working with youth in youth work, man, that's triggering. It is really triggering in some cases. And I was like, wow, I can't react against them. It's not their fault. My job is to support them the best way I can. So that's the mindset I took into support work, was, okay, I have those triggers there. And this can be another podcast, actually, triggers and catching the triggers. So my triggers are there and I'm aware of them, but it's like, that's not my role. I'm wearing the support worker cap now. I've got the support worker hat on. So I've got to pull in all the resources I can in my training and in my worldly travels to de-escalate this, to deflate this, that's the job of a support worker. So that's I've I've never healed my traumas. They're still there if I let them come up, and if I let them overtake me, they're there. But I deal with them. And I deal with them in a mature and healthy way now compared to my past.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, I really resonate with that. And just acknowledging we've got only a few minutes left, and just touching on the subject of trauma. If somebody else in my past has inflicted some sort of trauma is a big juicy word, man. I like to just think of it as a past negative experience, because that's truly what it is. So if somebody else has inflicted some sort of pain, and that's what I've reacted and responded it to, say it was my father, he only knew what he knew at that time. There's a very high chance that his intention was not to inflict any sort of pain against me. So it's really just how I respond to it. And with my awareness, the truth is he made a mistake, or maybe he was stressed because of work, or maybe he just didn't deal with his stuff, and it's now been passed down to me. So it's just stopping it. It's like breaking the chain, because otherwise I'm gonna project it onto somebody else that I'm not intending to. So it's
I've had a big breakthrough recently as far as dealing with childhood traumas, where previously I was trying to heal it. I was trying to get rid of it. And through teachings from a spiritual teacher that I've been following, rather than trying to heal it, trying to get rid of it, the idea is embracing the trauma and bringing love into it and make it part of me. And it's actually keeping the trauma as part of me, but transforming it into, something more positive. It's transforming it with love. And that's been only in the past few months I've done that, along with my dreams telling me what the trauma is. So it's all sort of coming together.
Yeah, wow. That's huge, Mark. That's huge.
Definitely another podcast, Slade. We've got another podcast
100%,
coming
bro.
up, and it's about that subject.
Yeah, definitely, bro.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, awesome. Man, thank you guys. We'll wrap this up, and it's been awesome to understand more about rumination and how it shows up and how we can progress through it. And I feel like there's a lot more value that has been added by having three minds working together. So it's been absolutely awesome. And I'd just like to share, I've got a community called 𝐏𝐫𝐶𝐬𝐬𝐢. So that's my business, and we've got a community there where this will be broadcasted every single week when we do the podcast. So if anybody wants to watch it live without needing to come onto the Zoom, that's where it's going to be. So that link will be in the description on the YouTube link. And if that cannot be found or accessed correctly, just shoot me a message. My social media will be in the description below. And I really excited about this one. So thank you guys. I appreciate you all. And we'll see everybody else who's watching on the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all of those fun things. And we'll see you soon.
Just before you click off, Slade, yeah, if there's anybody out there that does need support, definitely get in touch with Slade or I. And as a part of my work, I might be able to support you as a coach, as a support worker. And if not, if something's beyond our reach, then we also have the resources for you to get in contact with.